I must share something difficult with you. My girlfriend, who is 20 years younger than me, is expecting a child. I have a preference for younger partners, so I have made the decision to get a divorce. Is that okay with you? All right. If you want a divorce, go ahead, but please take good care of our son. What? You should take the boy with you. Haven't you spoiled him enough? No, I can't. Because he is? I closed my mouth right there. If this conversation were to remain between us, there wouldn't be any problem. However, Ken must have overheard it from his place in the room. What would he think if he heard this? That was my only concern. Still, I must respond. Otherwise, this man will not understand the gravity of the situation. Destroying our happiness and only thinking about his own, that's too selfish. I won't stand for it. Just as our happiness was taken away, I want to take his away too. Driven by such feelings, I decided to confront Ted with a shocking truth. My name is Mila Davis. I am 41 years old, living with my husband Ted and our high school junior son Ken. I married Ted 13 years ago when I was 28. Back then, I was an insurance saleswoman visiting various companies to sell insurance. That's when I met Ted, who was working at a local import-export business, having recently divorced his wife. My wife cheated on me and left me. Now I'm living with my 5-year-old son, just the two of us, and it's pretty lonely, he said, looking somewhat sorrowful. Every time I visited Ted's company for work, I started talking to him. Eventually, Ted asked me, "Would you like to go out together?" But we never went out, just the two of us, because Ted always brought his son Ken along. He can't stay at home alone, right? I'd really love for you to be my son's new mom, but I guess you wouldn't want to marry a man with a child, he said. Seeing him like that, I thought he truly cherishes his child. If he could care for a child like that, then surely he'd care for his family. So, I decided to marry Ted. But that was all a performance to marry me. In fact, as soon as we got married, Ted changed. I quit my job and became a housewife. Housework and childcare became my job, which wasn't a problem, but Ted started neglecting Ken. Before our marriage, he even brought Ken along on our dates. But after our marriage, he didn't even look at Ken, not just on weekdays, but even on weekends. Ted never talked to Ken, never took him out, never played with him, nothing. Even after Ken started elementary school, Ted's attitude didn't change. I went to all the school events alone, and he totally ignored all events that parents should join and enjoy together. You could at least attend some of the school events with Ken, I told him once. Ted made a grimace, signed annoyance, and said sorry. But I'm just tired from work. What? Oh, be quiet. Taking care of our son is your job as his mother, right? Just do it properly, he shouted, ending the conversation. What happened to the man I knew before we got married? I felt a twinge of regret. Then, one day, Ken had just come home from elementary school and was helping me prepare dinner when a message from Ted arrived on my phone. Wait, what? He's bringing his subordinates home from now on. Apparently, he was going to bring several colleagues home. Ted had just been promoted to team leader, so he probably wanted to deepen his relationship with his new subordinates. What should I do? We don't have any food stored. They would surely end up drinking at our home. And if that's the case, we'll need some snacks. It's not even an hour's drive from the office to our home. After some thought, I decided to go to the nearby supermarket to buy some ingredients. When I arrived home, I immediately started cooking in a rush. I'll help too, offered Ken. Oh, thank you. Then, could you please get the dishes ready? We worked hard, but there were limits to what we could prepare. Ted arrived home when only about half of the preparations were done. I'm home. Hey, I brought my colleagues, Ted shouted at the entrance. I greeted them briefly and led them to the room, serving beer and snacks. As I contemplated the next dish, Ted came into the kitchen and asked, "Hey, what's happening with the food? I told you in advance. I'm cooking right now. There are snacks, so it should be okay for now. What have you been doing? If you could notify me a bit earlier, stop complaining. You should have this ready. Do you want me to be embarrassed?" I was shouted at and left speechless. There were countless things I wanted to rebut, but the sound in the kitchen could be heard in the living room. The guests must have felt uncomfortable too. Thinking so, I couldn't say anything in response. In the end, I silently endured our guests. But once they had left, I had a big fight with Ted. I was angry at Ted for shouting at me just because of his own convenience. Ted puckered his lips and said in a childish manner, "Okay, fine. I'll have a party and some venues from now on. Happy now." After that, Ted started hanging out more. His spending got wilder, and he would head out early on his days off. By then, Ken had become a 7th grade student, and it started costing money for things like after-school programs. That's when I talked to Ted about wanting to start a part-time job. A part-time job? What, you want money for leisure? No, that's not it. It's for things like Ken's tuition for the after-school programs. Oh, I see. Do whatever you want. Even though Ted, perhaps because he was drunk, gave a careless response, I got his word, and so I started a part-time job as an insurance agent. I asked a former boss from the company I worked at before marriage to make me a part-time employee. This should make things a little easier. Even then, because Ted complained, I couldn't slack off on housework. The time I could work was limited, and I had to prepare dinner before Ted got home. I managed my time well and kept working. Then, one day, I accidentally let work run late. I hurried home, but Ted had already returned. As soon as he saw me, Ted asked with a sullen face, "Where have you been?" "I was at my part-time job." "Part-time job? You weren't cheating on me, were you?" Ted stared at me intently. "There's no way that's true." I denied it firmly, but Ted kept looking at me with suspicious eyes. Just as I was wondering what to do, Ted reached out for my smartphone. "Let me see. I'll check if there are any men's names." "Stop it. Shut up." Ted forcefully snatched my phone and began to check the contacts. He quickly found my boss's name. "Hey, who's this? It's a man's name, isn't it? He's your lover, ain't he? All right then." Before I could react, Ted dialed my boss. "Stop it. You just keep quiet." Thankfully, the misunderstanding was cleared up quickly. I extended my sincere apologies to my boss, urging Ted to do the same. However, he simply looked away, blaming me for making the situation appear dubious. "Your fault for making it look like you're doing something wrong," he insisted. Since then, our relationship took a downward turn. Even as Ken progressed to the 9th grade, nothing changed. I couldn't help but question whether it was okay to continue in this strained relationship. Despite my concerns, I struggled to find a way to mend our relationship. Before I knew it, Ken had become a senior in high school, preparing for college. Recently, the atmosphere between Ted and me had turned icy, and arguments at home became rare. At least this way, it wouldn't adversely affect Ken's studies. I thought things could remain like this until Ken entered college. Then, one day, my job required me to be near Ted's workplace. If our relationship had been better, I would have invited him to lunch. As I muttered this, I noticed Ted's car across the intersection. Wait, is that Ted? With who? Squinting, I saw 2 people laughing and chatting, and the word infidelity flashed in my mind. Accusing others of infidelity while doing it yourself, what a joke. I was too stunned to say anything. Secretly, I took a picture of them and went to a private detective to investigate Ted. I probably knew the answer already. The idea of divorce was already planted in my mind. But evidence was crucial, so I waited for the results of the investigation. About a month later, the results arrived, and they were damning. He really had the nerve. Just divorcing didn't seem enough anymore. How should I get back at him? On a certain day off, lost in my thoughts, Ted, who was supposed to be out, came home unexpectedly. Rushing over to me, he exclaimed, "I'm sorry, but my girlfriend, who's 20 years younger, is pregnant." What? I couldn't believe my ears, but there he was, a smirk on his face, declaring, "So yeah, my girlfriend, who's 20 years younger, is pregnant. I prefer younger women, so I'm gonna divorce you. That's fine, right?" Well, he certainly had the guts to confess his affair himself. However, I saw this as an opportunity. With this in mind, I decided to seize the moment. "Go ahead and get married, but please take care of our son." With a smile on my face, I said this, seemingly catching Ted off guard. What? You should take our son with you. I've always been so fond of him. I don't want to, because that boy is... I carefully chose my words, aware that Ken, studying in his room, could hear me. What would he think if he heard this? That was my only concern. Nevertheless, if I didn't stand up to him now, he wouldn't understand the gravity of the situation. It was far too convenient for him to destroy our happiness and go off to find his own. I wouldn't let that happen. I wanted to snatch away his happiness, just like ours was taken from us, driven by these thoughts. I decided to confront Ted with a truth that would stun him. I hate to break it to you, but isn't Ken your son? He's not mine. What are you talking about? We're married, right? If we're married, then our child is our child, right? Ted declared, looking smug. At that moment, I was at a loss for words. Is this guy an idiot? He's 4 years older than me, and he knows nothing. I was too stunned to say anything, surprised at his lack of understanding. I exhaled deeply and hit Ted with the truth. Ken is your child with your ex-wife, right? So what? In other words, to me, Ken is your stepchild. To make a stepchild one's own, one must adopt them. Ha, adoption. Ted furrowed his brow. Generally speaking, stepchildren remain just that, stepchildren. To act as a real parent, the only way is to adopt them legally. Without doing that, you can't have parental rights, and the child won't be legally recognized as yours. Of course, socially. They may be seen as your children, but there's no legal binding. A step-parent has no legal obligations, and a stepchild has no rights to the parent's inheritance. I explained to Ted, I didn't adopt Ken when I married you. That's why I can't take Ken with me. Hold on, so does that mean I have to take care of Ken? That seems to be the case. Although I wouldn't say you'd be charged with parental negligence just for leaving him alone. Ken is a high school student, an age where parents are obligated to raise their children. In other words, it can be said that Ted can't just abandon him. While looking stunned, Ted pleaded with me, come on, that can't be right. What can't? I have a baby on the way, and I plan to live with my newborn and my soon-to-be wife, just the three of us. That was the condition for marrying Kay. Oh, so the woman he cheated with is named Kay. So, that has nothing to do with me. It's got everything to do with you. This could all be resolved if you just take Ken. But I've told you I can't, right? Just find a way. Please don't ruin my happiness, he begged. Don't ruin his happiness. I was shocked at his audacity. After shattering our happiness, he doesn't get to demand his own happiness. With clenched teeth, I told Ted, no matter what you say, what can't be done can't be done. You should ask your girlfriend Kay. You're truly heartless. Fine, you'll regret this. Ted slammed the table and stood up. As he picked up his cell phone, he walked out of the room, making a call in the hallway. Yeah, that's right, so... I could hear his voice. Eventually, Ted came back and said to me, just wait. I'm bringing Kay over. What? You're bringing her here? Of course, because you're refusing to budge. I have no other choice. For some reason, Ted shouted angrily, seeming to believe he wasn't in the wrong. Well, we still have to discuss the division of property. And this might make things easier. With that thought, I quietly watched Ted leave. About an hour had passed since Ted left the house. He returned, bringing a woman with him. As I stole a glance at her, she greeted with a look of discontent. Ah, hi! She didn't even attempt to meet my gaze. I could somewhat understand her feelings. Meeting the spouse of the person you're having an affair with, no matter how you think of it, cannot be a pleasant experience. Regardless, Kay turned out to be the woman who had been in Ted's car that day. I can't deny thinking it's all because of this woman, but thanks to her, I can bring Ted down to his lowest. With that thought, a smile naturally spilled onto my face. How should I start the conversation? While I was considering this, Kay spoke up first. You're Milo, right? Don't you think your child is adorable? You've lived together for about 13 years, haven't you? Are you talking about Ken? If so, I do think he's adorable. I consider him as much my child as if he were my own. Then why are you abandoning him? You should take him with you. I stared at Kay, sweat beginning to bead on her forehead. I knew it. She condemns me with her words, but she doesn't truly mean it. I recalled the results of the investigation into Ted's conduct. If the current situation described there about Ken is true, it makes sense why she would argue like this. So, I decided to shake them up. I'd love to take him with me, but no matter how adorable he is and no matter how much I love him, legally only Ted is Ken's parent. I can't become Ken's parent. But yes, there's also the option of not getting a divorce, and you need to raise your child by yourself. Upon hearing this, Kay flinched. She then turned to Ted and said, I can't raise a baby on my own. Don't worry, I'll take care of our child. Besides, I'm definitely getting a divorce, and I want to be with you. At that point, I interrupted. What are you talking about? It hasn't been decided whether we're getting a divorce yet. Shut up. I'm definitely getting a divorce. So you're taking Ken with you. We're gonna discuss that later. We're getting nowhere. Okay, what do you think? I turned the conversation over to Kay. She made a pout and said, I can't raise someone else's child, even if it's the child of the man you love. Course not. I love Ted, not some child of Ted and another woman. Oh, I see. But isn't your argument a bit strange? Why do you want to raise someone else's child? That's your personal opinion, and I won't blame you for it. But you're okay with making Ted raise another person's child, right? As soon as I said that, Kay's face turned suddenly pale. At the same time, Ted tilted his head, questioning, What are you talking about? I'm talking about the baby, Kay's baby in her belly. This child is mine. I told you that before. While Ted seemed puzzled, I continued, You did say that, but it's odd. According to what I investigated, the father of Kay's child should be another man. As soon as I broke the news, Ted turned to Kay. With her face pale, Kay looked down, and Ted stared at her. The whole scene was so ridiculous that I nearly burst into laughter. Ted interrogated Kay, asking if what I said was true. Kay banged on the table, arguing back, Don't be stupid. The father of this child is you, Ted. But I calmly told her, That's not true. I have proof. Look. Saying this, I laid out a single photo on the table, an image obtained through a private investigation. The picture showed Kay and an unknown man talking in front of an obstetrician's office. With a private investigation, they also checked if she was cheating. According to that, she had a man she was seeing, and the child in her belly was his. Kay started to stutter, unable to speak. Seeing her like this, Ted seemed to have understood everything, collapsing in despair. That's why you should divorce me and raise the child together, I suggested. Well, Ted, you'll be raising someone else's child. But okay, you're okay with that, right? No way. Don't forget about Ken, okay? Ted pleaded. Wait, let's get back together, Mela. If I break up with her, you won't divorce, right? What? You're saying whatever suits you. Sorry, but I was also planning to divorce, so this comes at the right time. And I'll claim a hefty division of property. Saying so, I slammed the evidence of their cheating on the table, photos of the two of them cheating, including Kay and the unknown man. Ted picked up one of the photos and shouted at Kay, This lying woman. It's all ruined because of you. That's my line. You should have thought I would prefer a younger man, Kay retorted. Suddenly, Ted and Kay started fighting amongst themselves. Fed up, I said, Take your fight somewhere else, and kicked them out of the house. After that, I went to Ken's room, gently knocking on the door. Ken peeked out. I'm sorry. You heard the conversation, didn't you? Well, yeah. But that was all on my dad. It's not like it's your fault or anything. But I'm totally fine, really. I'll be a college student next year, and I'll make my dad pay for the move, and then do whatever I want. Ken flashed a slight smile, seeming more mature than I had thought. I was relieved to see my son's growth. However, his father, Ted, has not matured at all. No matter how many times I tried to contact him, he stopped answering my calls. Even after a few days had passed, the situation remained unchanged. The divorce negotiations wouldn't proceed like this, and he doesn't seem to be coming home either. Troubled, I decided to go to Ted's company, but showing up suddenly might just be a nuisance. So I contacted Ted's boss, Mr. Wilson, before heading to his company. When I arrived at the company, Mr. Wilson promptly attended to me and summoned Ted to his office. At the same time, he also called for Kay. With the two of them in front of me, I addressed Ted. "You know why I'm here, right?" "What's it?" "Because you won't cooperate with the divorce discussions. How much longer do you intend to avoid addressing this?" I asserted with conviction, but Ted simply shrugged in response. On the contrary, Kay remained silent since her arrival. "You seem anxious that your boyfriend will discover your affair with Ted, don't you, Kay?" I remarked, smirking. She appeared disheartened, as it seemed her true love also worked in the same company. It was only a matter of time before Kay's infidelity was laid bare. Ted resisted cooperation with the divorce discussions until the very end. However, after a stern reprimand from Mr. Wilson, he reluctantly agreed to participate. "Well, I'll be heading home now," I announced, and Ted expressed his dissatisfaction. "Showing up at my workplace? Are you kidding me? If this tarnishes my reputation, what will you do? You're the one at fault, not me. Besides, an affair won't get you fired. In fact, you can't be fired for having an affair." Ted argued, but I was indifferent. "It's not my concern. I came to discuss the divorce. Whether you quit your job or not is not my problem. The same goes for Kay. Well, do your best," I retorted, leaving Ted and Kay at the office. Later, through my lawyer, I successfully secured the division of property from Ted. However, according to Vice Mr. Wilson, complications arose after my departure from his office. The news of their affairs spread rapidly throughout the company, leading to a chain of events. Kay's boyfriend learned about the affair, and they had a significant argument, resulting in an immediate breakup. Enraged by the breakup, Kay demanded compensation from Ted for mental abuse. Naturally, Ted contested her claims, leading to a messy court battle. With the affair becoming public knowledge and court proceedings underway, both Ted and Kay had to leave the company. Ted struggled to find new employment, partly due to his age, and ended up working part-time at a local shop. Kay, pregnant and seeking refuge, retreated to her parents' house. Their lives became entangled in the complexities of the court case, and their reputations suffered. On the flip side, my life was on an upward trajectory. My boss suggested my return as a full-time employee, and I am now diligently working in that capacity. My relationship with Ken, who is focused on college preparations, is thriving. He even introduced me to his girlfriend, expressing his respect for me as a parent despite Ted being his father. Although I am no longer officially his mother, he appreciates my support during this crucial time.